Around 2004, I was about 15 and in my 4th year of secondary school. I lived in a suburban street that had a large open field, a short walkway, and we would always walk the dogs around the field. Sometimes I'd go for a jog there to get outside and just do something. A long time before, I would have my own PC and sit around indoors doing Sweet FA. As an aside, something I'm looking to change lately. At the time, I was very into high fantasy fiction, including Lord of the Rings and Aragon, and looking into role-playing tabletop games and so on. In my first year of secondary school, 2001, our form tutor, Mr. Smith, had surprised us all by letting us into his life as a long-time Dungeons & Dragons games master, and a full-on live-action role-play enthusiast. Naturally, we had a D&D after-school club. The big surprise was when he brought his LARP group to battle in the school field. Seeing crossbow bolts fly and learning how chainmail was forged was a real eye-opener and made me feel more comfortable in the D&D tabletop hobby. Flashback to 2004. My parents were out for the day, seeing my aunt and uncle in the next county. So I was walking the dogs alone across the field. It was an average walk. We chased the rabbits, and the dogs rolled in every bit of dirt it was possible to roll in. Suddenly, out of the cluster of trees near the bottom of the hill, stepped an elven ranger, bow and arrows in hand, pursued by a warlock wearing a Black Sabbath t-shirt, a fighter with a massive unwieldy greatsword, and a tall mustachioed man with a quarterstaff. I was actually quite taken aback when I saw it. But there was no mistaking that this was a LARP group, here on the field mere yards from my house. It took me a few moments to work up the courage to approach, but I did, with the dogs on the leash, muzzled not because they are vicious, but because it stops them pulling the walker every bloody which way. I was thinking that would be enough of a deterrent if things went south, but hoping that they would be friendly, being a teenager with conflicting thoughts drilled into me from an early age. Don't talk to strangers, don't judge a book by its cover. Anyway, I figured I would approach safely, and they seemed friendly enough, starting by immediately embracing me as a fellow tabletop gamer, and regaling with tales of how their party had vanquished a goblin king, or whatever. It was all very enthralling, and before too long we were introduced. I forget most of the names, but it is a mustachioed man, who was the GM, who sticks with me and is the focus of this post. Damien Rogers. After introductions were done, it was just starting to rain and the dogs were becoming restless. Damien said that, as the weather was worsening, they were going to go inside to his house and play Double Dash on the GameCube. And did I want to join them? There would be cookies and hot chocolate and video games for everyone. That was tempting. But I at least remembered that strangers were still strangers, and you shouldn't enter someone's house randomly, since that was a massive risk. I said I had to take the dogs home, but maybe when the weather cleared up, I'd be up for joining the LARP group. It didn't quite go that way. It turned out that Damien had moved into my street, a fair distance up the road, closer to the field. So if I ever wanted to walk the dogs, I had to walk past his house. And conveniently, he was often just by the door or leaning out the window when I went past. He'd ask when I was going to join the LARP group, which I occasionally saw practicing combat in the field on weekends. I was busy studying for school, of course, so I could only say when I have the time. He'd also ask if I wanted to come in to play games or have a cookie, which I still politely declined. I mentioned Damien to my parents, and my dad says, "Seems like a weirdo." Mum says he's just being a grumpy old fool about it. But then my dad does have quite an astute, observational, and contextual common sense. I probably should have listened to him earlier. School comes back into the picture. Mr. Smith, my first-year form tutor, tells me he's heard from a close friend that I'm interested in getting into the LARP scene. I wonder, who is it? It's Damien. This is unsurprising, actually, since Mr. Smith was in fact the head of the largest LARP group in the county, and would have ties to a lot of people in the hobby. Turns out that Damien and Mr. Smith are indeed quite close friends. I hear from Mr. Smith that Damien hasn't quite finished the moving out process, and needs help moving things out of his mother's house. I feel like this is the opportunity to change my dad's mind about Damien, and let slip that he has a van large enough to move a considerable amount of furniture, intending to ask him later about it. The next time I pass Damien's house with the dogs, he waves me down and asks if my dad is available to help move the remainder of his things from his mother's house. I'm just a little bit charged by the suggestion, but again, he and Mr. Smith were quite close friends, and it seemed natural that the information would get passed on. On the way back from our daily walk, Damien is just leaving the house and asks if he can meet with my dad to discuss using our van for his move. I agree, and we walk to the house. This is my first mistake. Now he knows the exact number in the street where I live, if he didn't already. I tell him to wait out in the front yard and take the dogs down to the side alley, to get to the back garden, to let them off the leash. I do not lock the side gate. This is my second mistake. I go inside, take off my shoes, and look for Dad, but can't find him. I go to the kitchen and speak to Mum and say I have Damien outside and would like to talk about using Dad's van to help move his extra furniture. Mum turns to me from what she's doing and literally drops everything with a yelp of terror. Damien is standing right behind me. He's quite tall, so this mustached face is fully visible from behind my head. I have no idea how I didn't hear him. He entered the house completely silently. The dogs made no noise about it. The door didn't slam, etc., etc. This is my first warning that something is not quite right with this man. Initial fright over, he introduces himself quite pleasantly. Mum berates me later for leaving the side gate unlocked, and quite rightly too. Dad gets back from the job he was working on out back, behind the garage. He is a car mechanic for a living, and is surprised to see the weirdos standing in our house. Handshakes and names are exchanged, and Damien gets straight to it, asking a price for moving his furniture this upcoming weekend. To my surprise, Dad jumps at the chance and says, "No charge for neighbours, it's what we do for each other." My dad at this point in life is a xenophobic, homophobic cynic who is convinced there is no one in the world who doesn't have their own perverted agenda. He's since changed for the better, and I can say he's just a plain cynic now. So this neighbour's bull is totally an act. He would only help out the next door neighbours because he's known them for 30 plus years and trusts them implicitly. New neighbours up the street? 10-foot barge pole. I don't question it vocally, and certainly not here in front of Damien. I wait for the weekend. The weekend comes and Dad seems very excited. Again, unusual. I get in the van with him and Mum, and we tail Damien and his wife, Alice, in their car, back to his mother's house in the next borough. Up to this point, I have only ever seen Alice briefly, sometimes gardening, sometimes with an actual tray of cookies, perhaps to prove they exist. She doesn't seem all there in the head, unfortunately, sometimes muttering to herself the same phrase over and over, or pacing back and forth doing nothing. It's a real shame because on the few occasions I have spoken to her lucidly, she's only ever been polite and cheerful, usually pointing out butterflies or interesting flowers nearby. Turns out Damien actually has a fair collection of junk that needs bringing to his new home, so we set to work. Mr. Smith shows up too with his family, to help clear out the old house. It's refreshing to see him as a person instead of a teacher, with what seems like a happy family. His wife is Scottish, loud, and absolutely bubbly, immediately making everyone tea. It's a busy slog of a day, clearing out cabinets and chairs and so on. Apparently Damien's mother's house is mostly his possessions, with his mother occupying just one of the bedrooms. We, my parents and I, attempt to tackle the upstairs bedroom belonging to him, while they stop for another round of tea. Removing the mattress from the bedstead reveals some objects which I wish I could forget, including a stack of tantric sex manuals, the Kama Sutra, sex toys, etc. There is also a pair of passports. My dad picks up the passports and opens them, then puts them back down where they were, and writes something down in a notebook he puts in his back pocket. We let the Rogers tackle the rest of their bedroom, and I noticed Dad had returned to his absolute state of cynicism, and what my mum refers to as old man grump face. Nothing more of note happened for the rest of the day, even moving everything back to the new house, etc. That night, my dad warned me to stop talking to Damien Rogers and his wife Alice. Ever since the first mention of him, my dad had been keeping notes in his daily diary about his activities like a paranoid conspiracy theorist. The passports had been the final straw. Rogers was not his real surname. Dad had written the real name down and cross-checked immediately with multiple authorities to discover that this person was a registered sex offender. He ensured the entire street knew about it before Monday. Angry reports were filed to the council and police by multiple people. I believe Damien's window was smashed by a thrown brick on one or more of the days. Smashed, repaired, smashed again, boarded over. His house was spray painted with nasty words. I would not wish this on anyone. It actually made me quite sad to see the violent response from my neighborhood. Mr. Smith claimed to have no knowledge of Damien's past, and told me that he cut all ties with him immediately after he found out what had happened. It was reported to the school by both parents and police that a sex offender was living nearby. I believe Mr. Smith wholly on this, and bear him no ill will, as he has continued to be a trusted friend and mentor. Damien did not live in our street for very long after that. I have since seen Alice wandering the streets of my hometown, carrying bags of shopping from the supermarket, occasionally smiling, but very often wearing a sullen, empty blank face. I have, however, never seen Damien, and I hope I do not cross paths with him again. Recently I got pulled over by a cop in my current TX town, and let off with a warning. My infraction? Not signaling a lane change, in case it's relevant. Whatever, we talk. He's attractive, friendly enough. I crack jokes, he does the same. I did my innocent white girl act to get out of the ticket. It works, and he asks for my information to fill out the warning citation. I go on my way. He follows me to my destination, which is my friend's house down the street. Weird, but maybe he thought I had been drinking. Promptly forgot about it. Only to have him text and ask me out the next day, using the phone number he lifted off my warning citation. I have been in a relationship for 4 years and I'm not interested, so I ignore it. And then I just get kinda mad. I already don't really like cops, and obtaining my number like that seems shitty, and is an abuse of power, so I reported him. Showed them the text, except, not unsurprisingly, his text used language implying I gave him my number in the first place, and even less surprisingly, that was his story when he was asked about it. So yeah, nothing ever came from it. Probably not this cowboy's first rodeo, and he seemingly covered his ass, which upset me more. Which brings me to the present. I see him parked on my street about once a week. 2 days ago I got into my car, only to have it start shaking a block from my house, and when I pulled over, one of my lug nuts was missing, and the others had been loosened. My wheel was about to come off. This made me realize that I need to be more vigilant about changing up my routine. I saw the cop parked on my street on my way home from a late shift at work the previous night. 9 times out of 10, I go shower and let my dog out. Then I go to my friends to crack a beer and do some homework for a few hours before bed. The other night, my friend picked me up instead. I swear I'm not crazy, but I haven't been able to tell anyone about this in real life because it sounds so improbable. This cop is watching me, and trying to sabotage my car. He would have known I'd only make it halfway down the road before breaking down, and then he could have swooped in to help. Fortunately, I deviated from the norm, and didn't notice it drive my car till about 5 p.m. the following day. I'm actually pretty terrified. I know I sound paranoid as fuck, but I'm pretty sure I might be being stalked, fucked with by a cop I rejected and reported. I have absolutely no evidence yet. I've already ordered dash cams and another one for outside my house, but I know no one at the police department here would believe me if it were true. So to the shitty cop who sits on my street and watches me come and go, pulled me over to get my number and might be escalating. Let's not meet. But if we do and it goes badly for me, at least I posted about it on Reddit, where someone could eventually find it and make the connection. I still kick myself over this. So, about 10 years ago I was a lowly undergraduate, working in a local pub for extra cash. It was a proper East End old man's pub, the type that is rapidly disappearing. The drinks were cheap, and the locals were in every night for a chat. I loved it. It was great fun. One night I was working and this huge guy comes in. Seriously, like, fill the doorframe large. As with all my locals, he immediately got a nickname. Meathead. He proceeds to spend the night propping up the bar, drinking and making small talk, telling me that he's moved back into the area after some time away. As the night went on, he got progressively more drunk and started telling me about how his wife had divorced him, how badly she had treated him, and how hard he had worked as a lorry driver to keep her happy. As a bar manager, I was pretty used to these sort of sob stories, and I saw it as part of my job, to lend a sympathetic ear. I had also recently experienced a very traumatic breakup of a long-term relationship, so I was happy to have someone to bitch out my ex to. I guess we all know where this is going, right? Yes, he started coming in all the time, and yes, he got over-friendly, but honestly, as any female who has ever worked in a pub will tell you, this is standard practice. All you have to do to warrant this type of attention is pull the pints and have a vagina, so it didn't really give me any concern. That was until he started waiting for me after work to walk me home. I didn't want him to do this, but he wouldn't really take no for an answer, and I thought that given I only lived about 20 meters from the pub, with 3 other people it would be okay. Wrong. Shortly after, he started walking me home after every shift. His behavior in the pub got worse. He would get more drunk and sometimes even threaten other customers for looking at me the wrong way. I started to get my flatmates to come and meet me after shift so that he didn't need to walk me home. Eventually, he started a big fight in the pub on a Saturday night, punched 2 security guards and got barred. I, by this time, was looking for a better paid job for the summer, and got offered a new one in the city, more money, better tips. I was relieved, and for a while I didn't see him. Okay, so here comes the stupid. After our exams, my friends and I went out and got smashed. I mean really, really smashed. We were in this bar opposite my house, and out of nowhere this guy appears. Explaining that I just finished my final ever exams, he buys a bottle of champagne. And in my drunken stupor, like an idiot, I drank that too. Inevitably, he tried to kiss me, and I stupidly allowed it to happen. Then he starts crying, saying how much he liked me, and how much he'd missed me. I could barely even stand up. At this point, my flatmate, who knew what a creep this guy had been, drags me off and says, "What the fuck are you doing? We're going home." He follows us out of the bar and asks me for my phone number. I said, slurred, that I had made a mistake, that I had a boyfriend now. I didn't. That I shouldn't have done it, and that I wasn't going to give him my phone number. He went mental, screaming and crying and calling me yet another dirty whore. So we ran over the road and into our house. Next day, bang, bang, bang at the door. My flatmate goes to answer it, and it's Meathead, so she says, "Look, she's not here," and he goes away. Same thing next day, and the day after, until after about a week. I shouted out the window at him that if he didn't fuck off, I'd call the police. Then the letters started, then the flowers. I should have gone to the police, but I blamed myself for what was happening. If I hadn't been so stupid. Anyway, 2 of my flatmates were Italian, and as their semester had finished, they moved out. Then my other flatmate went traveling around South America, leaving me alone in the house for 3 weeks before I moved. I was freaking out, so I spent a lot of time staying at friends and avoiding being in the house on my own. Eventually, however, I had to go and get some new clothes, do my washing, etc. I came home to find that my flat had been broken into, so I phoned the police. They asked me to check what had been taken, when I realized that not only had nothing been taken, but the only thing out of place was my underwear drawer, being open and my bed looking like it had been slept in. I was meticulous about those things. I finally lost it and told the police what happened. They said they would look into Meathead, and in the meantime I gathered my things and moved out into another area of London. When they got back in touch, what they said absolutely floored me. Meathead had not been away, he had been in prison for the attempted murder of his wife. So, Meathead, I imagine you're probably back in prison now. Let's not meet again. Edit. Also, fuck. Okay, so, I was out tonight with a friend and I told him what happened. And then I came home and actually spoke to my fiancé about the whole thing. He knew I had a crazy stalker that tried to kill his ex, but I hadn't been honest about my involvement, and he made me feel better about the whole situation. Yes, the police did know where he was, but I didn't want to press any charges or have anything to do with him, even though he was on probation, and if I had, it would probably have sent him back to jail. Being honest, I also think that one of my Italian roommates had moved out early because of the constant harassment. To be honest, I just wanted to forget it ever happened. I also regret that deeply now, but I was young, away from my family, on my own, and I blamed myself. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here. Well, I am being very, very bad. I'm recording these videos out of sequence. Mostly because I can't figure out what the hell I'm doing for Saturday yet. So, this is Sunday's video. Obviously, I uploaded it on Sunday. So now I'm going to decide what I'm going to do for Saturday. I have some ideas, but we'll see what shakes out. Okay, so, until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.